Hi, I'm Tina Hill. You're watching My Life with Tina, and today we have a very special edition. We're taping at WCTV in Richmond, Indiana, and I have a very special guest. Could you please tell me your full name?
Vagas Ferguson.
And what is your nickname?
Vegas.
And how did you get the nickname Vegas?
Well, as a child growing up, my grandparents, I was around my grandparents a lot. So one of my set of grandparents on my father's side, she couldn't pronounce Vasquero, so she called me Vago. So Vago kind of stuck and turned into Vegas.
Right.
And so everybody started calling me Vegas from that.
Okay. Tell me about growing up in a small town in a big family. You grew up in quite a large family?
Yeah, unfortunately, fortunate, well, I did have a big family, but unfortunately because my mom passed when I was about 8 years old, and there were 7 of us. And then my grandfather on my mother's side and grandmother on my mother's side took us in and raised us. And at that time they had a daughter, an older daughter, another daughter, and she passed. And she had 3 kids. So they came to live with us.
That's an extra large family.
Yeah, so at 8 years old we had about 10 kids in the house. And so it was a big, and so we consider ourselves brothers and sisters since they raised us together from that point on. So.
And where were you in the lineup of the family? And I assume there was like some sort of precision with that many family members on who got to use the bathroom.
Well, hello,
that
was a good. I was going to mention that. That was the hard part. I was 5th, 5th oldest. So we had to go when we got ready for school. The older ones who were older went first. And then again, the ones in the middle, and the ones at the end. So, whoever got there, sometimes you had to go outside. If you're boys, we got to run outside, and the girls got to use the restroom most of the time. There's 3 out of 10 of us. There were 3 girls, and then 7 boys. So it was touch and go there. Sometimes.
But you learned how to do everything very quickly.
Quickly and in order.
And in order. What were your dreams as a child?
Really, just growing up with a big family, neighborhood was vibrant. It really wasn't about, dreaming to be something or be this. You just went out and played. It wasn't until we really got into sports and being able to watch sports on TV that you start to emulate people you saw, whether it was basketball or New York guy, Walt Frazier, for instance, a great basketball player for the Knicks back in my time. When I was playing basketball, I was Walt Frazier because I could, try to shoot the ball like Walt. When it was football, I was Jim Brown, somebody like that, or so you emulated those guys you saw on TV, and so. But as far as aspiring to be them, to be a professional, you didn't aspire. I mean, you were just a kid, so you weren't thinking that far ahead. You wasn't that developed at that point.
Speaking of role models, your cousin was the great Lamar Lundy.
Yes, he was.
One of the fearsome foursome. Did he have an influence on you growing up?
He came back to talk to us. I was in elementary school when he came back one time to talk to and he was 6'7", 6'8". And so to see somebody that big, and you just admire, from the size of him. I mean, you were just in awe. You didn't know anything about what he did. You just knew that he was a big guy. and I didn't even really at that point know he was with my cousin.
Right.
And that became through my grandfather on my father's side, and it was Lamar Lundy's mother's brother. They were brother and sisters. So we were kind of close, So I didn't realize that until later. But again, Lamar was spoken of, but we never really, made that connection until he was older, until he came back, and then we got together and we kind of enjoyed each other and our stories, those kind of things. Yeah.
So when you were younger, did you love playing football, or did you play it because you were good at it?
Yeah, just played in the schoolyard. I mean, it started in the schoolyard. I mean, you played softball or baseball, softball. You played basketball. You played football. Anybody who had a ball, you were playing, whatever that was.
Was
And
there
so,
a time when you just started to focus on football, or you just kind of
No,
played everything for a long time?
Again, coming up, I was fortunate. Was fortunate to play. The YMCA had a program when I was about, I think, 4th or 5th grade.
Was that the Gray Y?
The Great Y.
My
And
brothers played Gray Y.
Yeah, Great Y. And so they had the basketball. They had the organized sports. And I wasn't used to playing organized sports. So anyway, I had a half brother named Roger Spicer, and he was playing at that point for one of the teams at the Y in the 5th. I think it was in the 5th grade. And then the coach asked him, said, "You know anybody else that would want to play?" And he said, "Yeah, I got some friends." So he got a bunch of us together, and and then we showed up. The coach said, "Oh, these guys?" Yeah, all these. He was happy to see all of us, because again, so he really got me involved in organized football. It was flag football back then. It wasn't.
Yeah, I remember that.
Wasn't contact, and we learned. That's where you learned your skills and learned the different skills in football. So it was a lot different for me, but it was that's when I was introduced to it.
Right. So was there any teacher or coach in Richmond that greatly influenced you?
Oh, all the way through. I mean, I give credit to all the coaches. I mean, whether it was in basketball, football. I mean, sports is pretty much being able to follow directions. And the good thing for me was that those guys made sure we was doing the right things, not only on the football field but off the field. There's a lot of things we could have got involved in, as young people. So my coaches kind of kept me directed, kept my direction based, on the sport at hand, whether it was football or basketball or whatever other sport I was playing. So I give them, you have to, go back and thank them for that. I wish I could name them all, but just to say, to them now, if they're watching this, that thank you for all you've done. And also the people who encouraged me, as I got better,
Right.
that encouraged me, especially academically, because that's one thing you got to have, your academics together before you can move to that next level in college. So
do you feel you were very driven at a young age to excel, or just kind of everyone encouraged you as you went along?
Because evidently they saw something, and it takes people to see what you have in you. I mean, you don't always see it. I mean, if you ask me, I wouldn't know better than anybody else out there, seriously.
Well,
because
you're very humble. But
it just so happened I was fortunate enough to make it to those next levels, college and then professionally. But really, I mean, just a lot of kids today that I see that have that same abilities, but don't have the same opportunities. For whatever reason, something went awry, and that's a sad thing. I can name off a list of kids when I was back, that I saw go to that high school over the last 25 years that could have played professionally.
So how do you think then you stood out, or you got what opportunity? So I was going to say, was it Brian Bullock?
Bullock. Brian was.
Is that who recruited you?
Brian recruited me at Notre Dame.
And how did you end up at Notre Dame?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, about your junior year, they start looking at you. People start looking at you. And again, I was talked about in the state because of my coaches. Again, they got my name out there. Hub Etchison was my head coach. Jim Peters was my running back coach. And so here in high school. So those guys, they kind of got the word out, and then people saw me play, and then they got the, and so now college coaches start looking at you, especially around the area, Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana, Purdue. All those schools were recruiting me at that time, especially my junior year. I was getting notices from them, letters from them, and then they actually start showing up my junior year. And so going into my senior year, then, all the guys, Woody Hayes come in from Ohio State. He came, I spoke to him. So they could do actual physical visits. So as we got there, so Brian was from Notre Dame, came down from Notre Dame. And again, being around Richmond, you're surrounded by Big Ten schools, Ohio State, Purdue, Indiana, right? So, so I wasn't thinking about anything about Notre Dame. And so all of a sudden, Notre Dame, he showed,
Did you have a dream school at that time that you were like, this would mean I really made it if I went to?
It wasn't even about that. To me, because I had a high school counselor that got a hold of me my sophomore year, because from 7th to 9th grade, we were junior high. So as you come into the high school as sophomores, you get counselors. So she said to me, you need to take academic courses, because she saw coming out of junior high school, the ability I had. So she said, well, you need to get in academic classes, because they had me on the general track. And I didn't know anything about general or academics, so she put me in all the classes that I need to have. So that was awareness, made me aware that I had some potential. She's got me taking these hard classes, because nobody else was taking them, and nobody wanted to take the general classes. But I mean, and her name was Nancy Nine. And as a matter of fact, I just saw her about last year sometime. Like, we're still in touch. I got a phone number. We still talk. But that's the beauty of relationships that sports bring about. Just doing the right things.